Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, October 29th, 2024. Our goal here is to review the market generated information in a holistic fashion. We're intimately following the auctions narrative, both ES and NQ. If we have time, we'll theorize and add additional commentary towards the end. Okay, last week was a bit of a sell off. Just a little bit of context of where we're coming from. We had our bit of a sell off and a reversal from the all time highs. We had a big rejection on Friday, with yesterday being a consolidation day, a small, tight inside bar. Waiting for basically just indecision. We're just kind of waiting for right now. We had a push lower to see if we were going to go to the end of Friday's range, and that did not happen. It was rejected, and we were pushed back up. Ideally, we just need to pick a side. So whoever wins this side may have more of the momentum. Bears didn't want it. Bulls, their goal was to really make a higher high within today's session, and that didn't happen. Yeah, it happened in the overnight, but that doesn't count. So really nothing happened except we just moved sideways. This is just more in favor for the Bulls and a negative point for the Bears. Really the same situation for the NQ, but the NQ has much more favor inside of the Bulls as their inside day. Yes, it was red indeed, but they were able to they were able to only break their prior day's low and came nowhere close for the Fridays. Friday was a bigger rejection for the S&P 500, not so much for the NQ. They were able to get a higher high, so good job. We'll look at the context a little more. So that's nice to see how we performed and all. And do remember this is in the middle of a pretty hectic week. We have our economic data that came out today for the consumer confidence, and then the jobs data, as well as like a few little smaller ones here and there. And then we have a big time earnings for after the bell. Even before the bell, we have Pfizer and McDonald's, just so on and so forth. There's a lot going on. SoFi and PayPal too. So again, we'll be back on it tomorrow with some healthcare and some more tech, and of course Thursday and Friday as well with more tech and then energies. So very hectic week, and then we have non-farmers payrolls on Friday as well. Not much data tomorrow. We do have the GDP, but definitely the PCE on Thursday, as well as Chicago PMIs and the jobless claims, and then we'll have the non-farm payrolls on Friday as well. So again, very busy week, very busy week. So speaking of technology, we can see that they were up 300 points for the day. Up 300 points for the day. And again, this is the downside that we had. Bears didn't really want to push it any kind of lower when they had the opportunity. You can see that the volume is about relatively average, about above average from what we've been seeing recently. But definitely the buyers, you can see how much delta this is. The most delta we've seen in a while. So buyers were definitely pushing. Sellers never really had control, and it was just a lot of buying today. It was quite aggressive, and to only see 300 points, just a little bit of interesting. Not so much for the buy delta for the ES. They were up 46 points. You can see sellers had control for a while. They had a lot of sellers on their back, a lot of turbulence, a lot of sellers within this bar here between the 50s and really the 80s, very much so. Buyers definitely were able to consider this as cheap. They had a lot of selling that was provided today, and they were able to push it back up. Sellers with very poor control, poor positioning, really getting squeezed from what we can see. Yeah. All right, and then we'll look at the sector tracker. We can see the S&P was up 16 basis points, with the leaders being technology and then communication services. I was really interested to see this in real time. Discretionary is getting their butt kicks today. Tesla and Home Depot being negative, and then even McDonald's. I'm curious how their earnings went. With the E. coli situation. But this was really carried on the back from communications and technology. This is not healthy. And even over the past 5 days, we've been kind of seeing this in general. We can't forget that this month has been a bit off, very much so with healthcare, consumer staples, materials, and utilities, but really pushing with the top one and then the top two with technology and financials, and then communication with energy behind them. So today, definitely a poor showing of the breadth, but it's a very good job for the healthcare to minimize their downside with Eli Lilly reporting tomorrow. Hold on, who else is some of their top? Eli Lilly. I'm not sure some of these other ones, but okay. So yeah, interesting day. Definitely tech led the way. Okay. So we will look at the market profile. So for the Nasdaq, do you remember we've been talking for the longest that they wanted to, excuse me, that the Nasdaq wanted to push above, kind of pull back, and really push through. We've been saying that for the longest now, and it looks like that's kind of what we're seeing. Today may be the first day that they were able to complete that. If you expand out this profile, again, we have yesterday, and then we have the monthly profile. You can see the high volume node or the VPOC zone here is within these 400s. Um, as the NQ kind of chopped sideways for the overnight session, we had a pull lower for the weekly low, seeing what was below the weekly extremes. And we were not able to pierce through this 400 zone. Ended up stopping near the 440s, 450s. And then with that, really pushed forward or pushed upwards, and there was no real sellers to be honest. So it looks like we are getting that pullback and then that continuation. So where will they be headed? This will be the singles that was left in, I think, the 17th of July. But there is like one more sell-off singles that was left. I mean, there's definitely some more up here for sure. But just the more nearest one was there at the 700s. They were able to hit a little bit of it, I think, last week, but they couldn't really stay above. But they revisited that area, pushed through, appears to may have had like a stop run, but this area has been completely taken through now. They did leave one set of singles here for the day. You can see this is a multi-distributed profile, so definitely good price discovery. Um, yeah, just a real battle today, and we can see that from the delta as well. Sellers try it. Same thing here. It's an ugly looking profile. I'm not sure what this is called, but it's definitely more of like a P-shaped profile from what we can tell. Notice all the volume is near at the top, but the majority of the time was spent in the middle of the day. So, if you break this out, you can see that this was the middle of the range, rather. You had your overnight session, then you had to look below, pushed up, consolidated, and then just pushed up and finished the day with the bear flag for the RTH session. So again, very good job for the buyers. They took the whole session and then they finished it on their terms. They hit their head on this 5880s and pretty much closed right below it, and they're kind of battling with it from the overnight. And again, if you kind of just zoom out a little bit, this is a very important area for the S&P 500. That is the pre-area for the 5900 zone, and this is the VPOC for the whole month. So again, very important area. If not, we may find our way back to the lower value area to kind of fill in these gaps near the 5800s. Looking at the 138-minute candle, complete obliteration of sellers straight through the range, no real stopping. Um, Finished near those singles, pierced above those singles, and we closed right below it. This is at 5880 zone for the S&P 500. We're able to push through, hit our head there, completely push down, even close below it. And we're kind of battling with that right now. It's a very important area for the buyers to win for the S&P 500. Same with the S&Ps. We got to push up, and then this is essentially just a grind up, trendish kind of day. Not higher highs and higher lows the whole exact time, but definitely. I mean, yeah, I think this would be considered a trend day. So yeah, I'll be quiet with that. We can see a lot of volume off the opening, so fairly nice relative volume for the RTH session, and then nice follow through, and then just complete give up from the sellers. No real opportunity, and then just got ultimately squeezed there. But you can see that there was like a lid on the price, and this is when they hit those 5880s. So again, we may have some sellers here, and again, that is the pre-zone for um, the sell-off from Friday. So again, important reference zone for the buyers to win. Really, for the Nasdaq, they just really just smoked all the sellers. really just pushed up, and you can just look at the delta here and just the volume in general. So very nice volume, very high delta, and it just continued all day. It's just a pure trend day, higher highs and higher lows the entire time. All right, let's look at the 3 minute candles for a little more context for how we moved. All right, so see where to start. So we have our S&P 500 at the top. Oof. We have our RTH, our overnight session, and then this is Monday, and then the Sunday night overnight session. So again, we had our Sunday night gap up, coiled, bull flag for the day, and it ended up just selling off, eating up the majority of that range. Within the overnight session of yesterday, we were able to completely fill in some of those. We were able to break the low of the RTH, and then completely break the low of the low of that gap up. Though we didn't fill in the gap ended up being filled towards the RTH session. So you can see sellers definitely attempted, pushed back up within the initial balance low of the prior day, and then sold off, creating a new low. Extremely weak as we headed into the market. Essentially the same case here for the NQ. As we push a little bit lower, we ended up breaking the low of the prior days. Of the prior day's range, and ate into the Friday's low as well. As we push up a little bit, they were able to get a little bit above their initial balance low from the previous day and essentially just coil to the right to start the RTH session, which leads us to the RTH session. Actually, I think it's a little better when I have it vertical. Still trying to find the best way to do this, so just bear with me. Yeah, because that's going to have it too much. All right, so we ended up having our yeah, fuck it, this is fine. All right, so yeah, we ended up having our potential open drive from what we were seeing, at least in real time. So very big engulfing bars, just really pushing through. Again, they were aiming to take the Friday's low, which failed, Friday's low, which failed, and then we immediately have a reaction near these lows. I'm not going to break this into the 1 minute bars. You can definitely check this on the DOM, on our DOM replays, and see what this looks like for this first bracket. But we break that overnight low. No real trading below that point. Unable to stay under there, and then we ended up being propelled back up into the initial balance mid area. They were able to push up to the open. Ended up being rejected, but unable to stay below the initial balance mid, and then just a nice trend up really for the majority of the day. Anytime we got close to being under the 5 smoothing average, that bar was engulfed. Any closes were engulfed at a new high. Any closes engulfed is a new high, and that pattern really consistent the majority of the session. Even when we had an extended leg below a couple of more closes under the 5 smoothing average, that whole sequence ended up being engulfed there as well. There was no real retest of the overnight high or the VWAP bands. This was just a clear trend up. Really the same thing for the S&P 500, though they were dragging ass a little bit, essentially, pulling up into this overnight high, and then essentially just bull flagging for the remainder of the session. No real touches on the VWAP. They had an attempt a little later in the day, but again, very nice trend day for the for both products, and it appears to be continuing into the overnight session as well. If we had to look at any kind of specific trades, we did take this in real time. Unfortunately, this looks a little more complex in hindsight, but just given the way the DOM was looking, again, it's the reason that we recorded. We could just see that this open drive, we're exactly where we headed. We're headed to the Friday's low. You can see buyers kind of firm up there, especially when you have this impulsive candle here engulfing the prior two candles. The subsequent pullbacks areas were not able to make a new low. That ended up being engulfed, reclaim of the 5 smoothing average, and then just the trend leg really started there. Any closes below the 5 smoothing average ended up being engulfed, and then that pattern just continued for the majority of the day. Even when we broke through the overnight highs and we had that big impulsive sell-off there, you still had that eventually eaten up and engulfed over with time rather. And essentially just the same thing for S&P 500. It's just they were not as clean, if I can recall. I'm not gonna try to go through here and figure this out, but yeah, it's a lot more bumpier on their way down. No real clear engulfing patterns from what we can see. But then once they got their trend leg going, they ended up having the same behavior. No real closes below the spot smoothing average. Once they had their first green bar with the little extended runs, they were able to really push through. But once they got to the overnight high, they really struggled for a while. They sat sideways for it looks like 2 hours or so. So yeah, S&P 500 just struggling just a little bit. So yeah, we'll go ahead and close it there. So how well did the buyers do for both parties? We'll give the NQ a 10. The fact that they were able to cut it close but defend their lows and really push. Very nice. I actually don't want to give them a 10. The fact that they had to expend so much energy with the buyer delta, that just seems a bit strange with the urgency. So I'm not really sure what to make about that. So that seems like a little fishy there. But nice job for the very nice job for the buyers for the NQ. For the S&P 500, we'll give them like a good, a good 7 or 8. Definitely a good job for sure. We don't really care too much of the way they started out with the bracket. It took them a little while for them to find some support. They were definitely getting carried by the technology sector. So just curious to see how these next couple of days are going to go. But this is a good week for tech to be carrying with earnings. So say what you will about that. But all right, we'll go ahead and stop it there. Thank you guys for joining. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, take care.